I am no longer his daughter. I stared at the name tag on the welcome counter, feeling the blood in my veins turn to ice. Evelyn. The family disappointment. The bold, tiny letters carved straight into my heart. I blinked once, then again, hoping I had misread it. But no. The words remained, cold and indifferent, as if someone were labeling a cocktail rather than trampling on a person's dignity. Laughter erupted from the lounge area. I didn't have to turn around to know whose voice it was. Miranda. The woman who had made belittling me into an art form, always disguising her cruelty as a harmless joke. I lifted my gaze and met her eyes, her lips curving into a smug, satisfied smirk as she sipped her wine. My heart pounded, not from fear but from anger. My fingers curled around the name tag, the cold plastic pressing into my palm. What could I do? Throw it on the floor? Rip it in half? Pick up a glass of wine and toss it in her face? No. I knew this game too well. Miranda always knew how to provoke me. If I reacted, I would be the hot-headed, selfish daughter, the failure, the exact person she had labeled me as. I took a deep breath and placed the name tag back down, as if it meant nothing to me. But inside, I knew. I hadn't just put down a piece of plastic. I had let go of the last drop of patience I had left. The birthday party was being held at Crestwood Manor, a place Miranda never missed a chance to boast about. A grand chandelier sparkled overhead, casting light over the extravagant dinner table, filled with lavish dishes my father never let me touch as a child. The guests were his closest friends, or rather the people who matched his status: wealthy, influential, important. I stepped inside, feeling like an intruder. No one truly noticed me. The handshakes, the laughter, the toasts, they all passed me by without pause. I scanned the room, searching for a familiar face. Where was my father? And then I saw him. Standing in the center of the crowd like a king among his subjects, he beamed as Sophia, Miranda's daughter, boasted about her new job. Beside her, Damien, her golden boy son, nodded in agreement, his smirk full of pride. They were the perfect children my father had always wanted. And me? I was just an afterthought. His gaze lifted, landing on me for less than a second. A fleeting moment, but long enough for me to understand everything. The distance, the indifference, and worst of all, the disappointment. He hadn't wanted me to come. He didn't even bother to hide it. A quiet, bitter chuckle slipped from my lips. What had I expected? A hug? A warm, "My dear daughter, I'm so glad you're here"? Don't be naive, Evelyn. I turned toward the drink table, plucking a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. My hand trembled slightly, but I wouldn't let anyone see it. I wouldn't let them see me as weak. What the hell are you doing here, Evelyn? I asked myself. I took a sip, letting the cold liquid slide down my throat. But it did nothing to ease the tightness in my chest. Then, footsteps behind me. Evelyn, long time no see. Miranda's voice, syrupy sweet, laced with venom. I turned, meeting her artificial smile. Miranda, I said, giving her a small, polite smile. It really has been a while. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes scanning me with that calculating look I knew too well. I'm surprised to see you here. I thought you were busy? She trailed off before offering a casual shrug. What was it again? Freelancing? I knew exactly what she meant. I didn't work for a prestigious corporation. I didn't have a shiny title. I didn't fit into this family's definition of success. I smirked. But before I could respond, she let out a soft chuckle, patting my shoulder lightly. But anyway, she continued, lowering her voice just enough for only me to hear, I suppose it's nice that you're here, especially since someone prepared a little gift for you." "A gift?" I frowned, following her gaze toward the welcome counter, and then it clicked. The gift was that damn name tag. Rage surged through me like a storm, but instead of letting it consume me, I felt something else, a strange, chilling calm. I am not that 14-year-old girl anymore. I am no longer the weak girl who had to endure their cruel jokes. I set my glass down on the table and took a deep breath. If they wanted to play games with me, I would show them. I was no longer the Evelyn they could mock. I stood in the middle of the party, the laughter and chatter around me nothing more than a cheap background track. Memories crashed over me like waves, pulling me back to a time when I still believed my father's love was unconditional. Back then, I was his whole world. Back then, I was his whole world. I remember how tightly he used to hold my hand when crossing the street, the afternoons he spent teaching me how to throw a baseball in the backyard, and the nights I curled up in his arms during thunderstorms. I used to believe that love would never change. Then Miranda came along. My father remarried when I was 10, and everything shifted so quickly that I didn't even realize I was being pushed to the sidelines of his life. At first, I tried to adapt. I smiled when my father introduced me to Miranda, saying, "She's the sweetest little girl you'll ever meet." His words made me feel like a guest, someone who needed to adjust rather than a daughter who truly belonged. Miranda, with her perfectly styled blonde hair and syrupy, sweet smile, pulled me into a tight hug the first time we met. "We're going to be such a happy family, Evelyn. We're going to love each other like real family." But we never truly existed as one, because Miranda only loved her own children. Sophia and Damien were her perfect little prince and princess. And me, I was nothing more than an inconvenience. The changes weren't immediate. At first, they were small. My father began missing my parent-teacher conferences, but never forgot to attend Sophia's dance recitals. He was too busy to take me to the park as he had promised, but somehow always made time for Damien's baseball games. Then, one Friday afternoon when I was 11, I stood outside Westbridge Academy, waiting for him to pick me up. Minutes passed. Then an hour, but he never came. I walked home, tears streaming down my face, my legs aching. And when I finally reached Crestwood Manor, exhausted and heartbroken, I found him sitting in the living room, laughing with Miranda, Sophia, and Damien, as if he hadn't forgotten me at all. "Did you forget about me?" I asked, my voice shaky from running and crying. He barely looked up, just sighed. "Evelyn, I was busy. You're old enough to understand, aren't you?" Understand. So Sophia and Damien didn't have to understand, but I did. I swallowed back my words, because I already knew the truth. In this house, my voice didn't matter. As the years passed, I became nothing more than a shadow. While Sophia and Damien were showered with gifts, praise, and endless support, I was left with responsibility. "Evelyn, watch Sophia for me. Evelyn, wash the dishes. Evelyn, cook dinner. You're older now. Stop asking for so much." That was their excuse for everything. I was older, so I had to give in. I was older, so I had to understand. I was older, so I no longer needed my father's attention. I remember once, Sophia knocked over a glass of milk at the dinner table. Miranda turned to me. "Clean it up, Evelyn." "But I didn't do it," I protested. She simply shrugged. "But you're the older sister." Sophia and Damien could do anything, make a mess, scream, break things, and there would be no consequences. And me? I was expected to stay silent. Everything reached its breaking point when I turned 18. Before my mother passed away, she had set aside a college fund for me. Every penny saved with the hope that I could become independent and finally leave Crestwood Manor behind. But when I needed that money, it was gone. I still remember the shock of opening my bank account and seeing the balance at 0. My throat went dry as I turned to my father. "What happened?" I asked. He spoke as if he were commenting on the weather. "I used it to help Damien get into college." My heart shattered. "That was my money," I whispered, my voice trembling. He simply shrugged. "Damien needed it more. You can still apply for scholarships, right?" In that moment, I let out a hollow, bitter laugh. I didn't need to ask Miranda. I already knew. She was the one who had pushed him to do it. Because in her eyes, I was never worth a future. I hated him from that moment on. That night, I packed my bags and walked out of Crestwood Manor forever. I took care of myself. I worked any job I could to survive. I didn't need his money. I didn't need his fake love. I didn't need this so-called family. But now, standing in the middle of this extravagant party, with that family disappointment name tag sitting on the table, I realized something. I wasn't the one who should be disappointed. They were. I tightened my grip on my glass and smiled. If they thought I would stay silent and endure this humiliation like before, they were wrong. I didn't just leave that house with a suitcase. I carried every scar they had carved into me over the years. The day I stepped onto that bus at Oak Ridge Station, I swore I would never need them again. And I kept that promise. I threw myself into my studies, working 3 jobs at once to pay for tuition, while Damien enjoyed his college life, indulging in all-night parties and luxury vacations. Funded by my father. My father funded Damien's extravagant college life, while I worked myself to exhaustion just to afford a cramped apartment near campus. I never complained. I had no time for hatred, no energy for nostalgia. I had one goal: never go back to that house. And I succeeded. 4 years later, I graduated with honors. No one from my family attended. No texts, no calls, nothing. But I never expected them to. I stood among hundreds of graduates in the Wellington University auditorium, watching as parents hugged their children, took pictures, and celebrated their achievements. And me? I stood there, proud of myself, in silence. Even after leaving them behind, I was never truly free. Every now and then, I would receive invitations to my father's parties, not because he cared, but because he needed to maintain the illusion of being a good father. I never wanted to go. But the pressure from relatives, the ones who always said, "Don't let the past affect the family," forced me to show up a few times, and each time, my father found a way to belittle me. I remember one Christmas a few years ago. I reluctantly accepted the invitation and returned to the house I once called home. I had hoped, just maybe, after all these years my father had changed. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew nothing was different. Damien, dressed in an expensive suit, bragged about the job my father had pulled strings to get him. Sophia lounged on the couch, a diamond ring glinting on her finger, boasting about her latest European vacation. And my father? The moment he saw me, he smirked. "Still doing that freelance work, Evelyn?" He didn't even wait for my answer. "Times must be tough. I could ask around, find you a real job." A real job. Those words hit me like a punch to the chest, as if everything I had built meant nothing. I wanted to tell him that I had started my own company, that I was more successful than ever, that I didn't need his help. But I knew it wouldn't matter to him. To my father, if I wasn't following his path, I would always be a disappointment. I placed my glass down, met his gaze, and said, You don't need to worry about me. I'm doing just fine. He only smirked, as if I were deluding myself. If you're really doing well, then why are you here alone? I left the party right after that. After that night, I refused every invitation from my family. I blocked Miranda's number, ignored Sophia's messages, disregarded the passive-aggressive comments from relatives. I didn't need them. But sometimes, whether I wanted to or not, I still had to face my father. The last time was at Sophia's wedding. I didn't want to go, but a small part of me thought I should, if only to prove to myself that I had moved on. When I stepped into the reception hall, my father looked at me with surprise, not because he was happy to see me, but because I didn't look like the failure he had always assumed I would be. Evelyn, he blinked. I wore an elegant red dress, my hair in a sleek updo, my makeup subtle yet sharp. I was no longer the weak girl he once knew. "Hello, Dad." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. He studied me for a moment before clearing his throat. "Have you found a stable job yet?" I almost laughed. Even now, he couldn't acknowledge that I had succeeded. I didn't need to find one. I built my own. "Oh." He nodded, but there was skepticism in his eyes. "That's fine, I suppose. But if you ever want a real career, I can help you." For the first time in my life, I didn't feel anger. I just felt pity. He would never admit that I had done well without him, because if he did, he would have to face the truth, that he had been wrong. I placed a hand on his shoulder and gave him a small smile. "No need, Dad, but you can be proud of me." I paused. "Or not. It makes no difference to me." Then I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, stunned. I was no longer that 18-year-old girl, desperate for his approval. I didn't need it anymore. Now, standing at his birthday party, staring at the family disappointment name tag on the table, all I felt was amusement. Did they think this would hurt me? They had no idea that I had let go of this family a long time ago. I lifted my glass, taking a slow sip of wine. If they thought I would stay silent, they were wrong. My gaze swept across the room, where everyone was dressed to impress, their laughter and conversation blending into a perfectly orchestrated performance. But I wasn't part of the show. No one welcomed me. No one truly cared that I was here. Their glances flickered toward me only for a moment before moving on, quick, dismissive, as if I were nothing more than a smudge on their flawless masterpiece. That was fine. I was used to it. My father stood in the corner of the room, a glass of wine in hand, engaged in conversation with a group of powerful-looking businessmen. When his eyes landed on me, I saw a flicker of surprise. It lasted only a second. Then, his expression returned to its usual indifference, like my presence meant nothing at all. I almost laughed. How foolish I had been to ever expect more from him. I slowly made my way toward the lounge area, where Damien and Sophia were chatting with a group of relatives. I had no intention of joining them, but Sophia's sharp voice cut through the air, making me pause. "Dad was so generous to pay for my wedding, but honestly, I think that's only natural," she said, twirling the sparkling diamond ring on her finger, her voice dripping with smugness. "Of course," Damien nodded. "Dad always prioritizes the kids with potential." The kids with potential. I pressed my lips together, taking another sip of wine to swallow the anger rising in my throat. So what did that make me in their eyes? But I didn't have time to be angry, because at that moment, I noticed something. The most important thing of the night. Near the entrance, a small guest check-in table was set up, neatly arranged with name tags. No one seemed to be paying much attention to them, except me. I stepped closer, scanning the names. Uncle Mark, Cousin Rachel, Neighbor Tom. And then, I saw it. My heart stopped for a second. Right in front of me was a tag with my name on it, and underneath, printed in small yet unmistakable letters, were two words that made my blood boil. The disappointment. I picked it up, my fingers tightening around the edges until my nails dug into my palm. What a pathetic joke. I didn't need to ask who did this. I already knew. At that moment, laughter rang out from the lounge area, a voice so familiar that I didn't even need to turn around. Miranda. She was laughing, a glass of wine in her hand, her eyes gleaming with amusement as she watched me. I took a deep breath and slowly placed the name tag back on the table. I wasn't going to let them win. I didn't snap it in half. I didn't throw it to the floor. Instead, I placed it neatly back in line with the others, as if it meant nothing to me. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to cry. I didn't need to react the way they wanted me to, because I knew exactly what Miranda wanted. She wanted me to explode, to lose control, to cause a scene, so she could paint me as petty, overly sensitive, dramatic. But I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I turned, lifted my glass to my lips, and took a slow sip, as if that name tag meant absolutely nothing. And when my eyes met Miranda's, I smiled. A calm, unbothered smile. Not angry, not wounded, just contemptuous. That smile made her frown. Not long after, my father approached. He didn't ask about the name tag. He didn't show a hint of anger at the fact that I had just been humiliated in his own party. Instead, he merely glanced at me, took a sip of his drink, and said in that infuriatingly indifferent tone, "I didn't think you'd come." I tilted my head and shrugged. Neither did I. A brief silence. "Are you still doing that job?" His voice was low, as if he was trying to sound polite but couldn't quite hide the disdain. "Which job?" I raised an eyebrow. "The company you're running?" I let out a laugh, unsure if it was from bitterness or exhaustion. "Yes, and it's doing better than ever." He didn't respond right away. He just looked at me for a long moment, as if assessing whether I was lying. Then he sighed, took another sip of his drink, and said, "Good for you." That was it. No congratulations. No sign of pride. Just an empty phrase, before he turned and walked away, blending back into his crowd. I stood there watching his figure disappear. Then I looked around. This room, this place, where everyone was complicit in my exclusion. Did they really think I would endure all of this in silence? Did they think I would stay quiet? If so, they had forgotten something important. I was no longer the Evelyn they once knew. I set my glass down, took a deep breath, then lifted it again, running my fingertip along the rim. A sharp clink rang out. The sound sliced through the air like a knife, and just like that, the room fell silent. If they wanted a game, I would give them a show to remember. I stood in the center of the room, a chilled glass of champagne in hand, the weight of my actions settling over the party like a thick fog. Conversations faded, one by one. Heads turned toward me. Some looked confused, others curious. But what pleased me the most was the look in my father's eyes. Unease. And Miranda. Her grip tightened around her wine glass, her expression laced with quiet alarm. They had no idea what I was about to do. I lifted my glass slightly and smiled. I suppose this is a special occasion, isn't it? A grand celebration for the man of the night. My father's shoulders relaxed slightly, as if he thought I would simply say something polite and move on. He raised his glass, waiting. I let them wait. I took a deep breath, letting the silence stretch just a little longer, letting them wonder. Then, with a voice calm but edged with ice, I continued. My father always taught me that family is meant to be a place of respect and support, that we should always stand by each other. Isn't that right? A few people nodded, assuming I was reinforcing his beliefs. They were wrong. I turned, meeting his gaze directly. But then, I realized something. I let my eyes drift across the room. For some people, family only exists as long as you follow the rules they set. Step outside their expectations, and suddenly, you become a disgrace, an outsider. The energy in the room shifted instantly. A ripple of tension spread through the crowd like a wave. My father blinked but said nothing. Miranda forced a tight smile, her fingers gripping her glass as if she wanted to crush it. I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, if I proved myself, my father would see me differently, that he would finally acknowledge me. A small, humorless laugh escaped my lips. But then I realized something. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I never even had a chance. Lowering my glass, I let my gaze sweep across the room, meeting each pair of eyes that had once dismissed me. My father only recognizes the children who follow the path he sets for them, the ones he can mold to his liking. I let the words sink in before adding, but me? I chose to live my own way, and for that I became the family disappointment. I paused, raising an eyebrow with mock amusement. Oh no, wait, they were kind enough to remind me of that, with the lovely little name tag they prepared just for me. A few people exhaled sharply. Murmurs started. I saw Damien frown. Sophia's eyes widened. Miranda tried to keep her composure, but her fingers trembled as she set her glass down. And my father... He cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the situation. Evelyn, not now. I laughed. Not now. I tilted my head. Oh, but Dad, it seems like it's never the right time for you to acknowledge me as your daughter, is it? Silence. I stepped forward, slowly closing the distance between us. All my life, I only wanted you to be proud of me. Just once. I shook my head, my voice quiet but firm. But I get it now. That will never happen, because I'm not Damien. I'm not Sophia. I'm not someone you can manipulate. I saw his jaw tighten, but he didn't deny it, because he knew I was right. And my dear stepmother, I turned to Miranda, giving her a slow, disdainful smile. You spent years trying to erase me from your perfect little family portrait. I tilted my head slightly, my voice turning almost mocking. But unfortunately for you, I'm still here. Miranda stiffened but forced a fake smile. Evelyn, you're being overly sensitive. It was just a joke. Oh, was it? I cut in, my voice light yet sharp as a blade. Well then, I have a joke for you too. I raised my glass, letting my gaze sweep across the room. Happy birthday, Dad. My voice was calm. And congratulations to everyone here. I paused, just long enough for them to hold their breath. Because this will be the last time any of you ever see me. A wave of shock rippled through the room. Sophia's mouth fell open. Damien's brow lifted. Miranda blinked rapidly, as if trying to process what was happening. And my father. He was frozen. Evelyn, don't you dare! But I didn't let him finish. I set my glass down on the table and turned away. No explanations. No hesitation. I was done. I could hear the panic behind me. Some voices called my name. I didn't stop. I walked through the doors, feeling lighter than I ever had before. I wasn't running away. I was setting myself free, and as the door shut behind me, I knew one thing for certain. I was never coming back. I slammed the car door shut, sitting upright in the driver's seat, my breath still unsteady from everything that had just happened. I had really done it. Not in a daydream. Not in some imagined scenario where I finally had the courage to stand up to them. I had done it. Right in front of them. My heart was still pounding. Not from fear, not from doubt. It was adrenaline. The rush of finally breaking free from the toxic cycle they had trapped me in. I pressed the ignition button, but I didn't drive. Not yet. Instead, I sat there, staring through the windshield at the brightly lit Crestwood Manor behind me. The music still played. But I knew. No one inside was in the mood to celebrate anymore. They were talking. They were shocked. They were angry. And I didn't care. I pulled my phone from my purse and unlocked it. A string of messages flashed across the screen. Miranda. You've gone too far, Evelyn. Come back immediately. Sophia. Are you trying to ruin this party? Unbelievable. Damien. You seriously have issues. Talk to Dad. I let out a small, amused scoff, scrolling past them without replying. My phone vibrated in my hand. My father was calling. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the decline button. A part of me wanted to pick up, to hear what he had to say, but I already knew how this would go. He wouldn't apologize. He would only try to regain control, to feed me more empty words about family and responsibility. I declined the call. A text popped up immediately after. Richard. Evelyn, come back. We need to talk. I didn't respond. I had nothing left to say to them. I woke up in my Lindenwood apartment, sunlight streaming through the window. No more fake laughter. No more snide remarks. No more condescending stares. I turned on my phone. Dozens of unread messages. I pressed block number on each name. Dad. Miranda. Sophia. Damien. Done. I sat still for a few seconds, waiting to see if guilt would creep in, but it never did. All I felt was relief. As I was getting ready for work, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated. Then, I answered. My father's voice came through, low and steady as always. Evelyn. I closed my eyes, taking a slow breath. I want you to come back, he said bluntly. You can't just walk away from family. I let out a quiet laugh, stepping toward the window and looking down at the street below. Did you call to control me, or to apologize? Silence. I already knew the answer. Family is supposed to stick together, Evelyn. His voice dropped slightly. I don't want this to escalate any further. I tightened my grip on the phone. Not escalate further? As if everything they had done to me before wasn't already enough? You never truly saw me as part of this family. I spoke slowly, each word severing the final thread between us. Don't pretend that you suddenly care now. Evelyn, don't be selfish. I laughed. Did you really just say that? Once again, silence. I pulled the phone away, glanced at the screen, and slowly pressed the button to end the call. No goodbyes. I heard nothing from them. Everything was eerily quiet. No more guilt-tripping messages. No more veiled threats. No more heavy feeling whenever my phone buzzed. But there were moments when I wondered, had I gone too far? Did I really need to cut them off completely? Maybe. I should have given them a chance to change. But then, I remembered. Every time they abandoned me, every belittling remark, every condescending glance, they hadn't changed. They never would. And I realized I had done the right thing. It tastes like peace. It's about reclaiming her worth. Sometimes true freedom doesn't come from being accepted. It comes from having the courage to walk away from those who no longer belong in your world. But blood doesn't always mean love. You are not obligated to maintain relationships that bring you pain. True happiness comes when you choose a life where you no longer need to prove yourself to anyone, except yourself. Would you have walked away like Evelyn? Or would you have given them one last chance? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family, betrayal, and self-discovery.